Hello and welcome to WDSportz. This is our preview for how the Wales team might do at Euro 2020. It's 2021, of course, wrongly named tournament, strangely named tournament. It's been a strange year, but Wales arrive full of confidence, you'd have to say. Of course, they are the semi-finalist from 5 years ago, but I think generally the thinking is that they're an underrated side with some quality, with international experience in a tournament. We've got Tim Kitchener joining us, as you can see in Wales' shirt, and Joe Tinkler also. So Tim, we'll start with you. Are you optimistic? What's the mood like?
I am optimistic of getting through the group stages. When we get past group stages, I'm not too sure, but I say the mood is pretty good. I'm not expecting us to do as well as 2016, but get out the group stages, pick up a lucky win in around of 16, and hopefully we might do it. But 2016 was a high, and just see how we go, basically.
Yeah, and Joe, 2016, of course, a hard act to follow, as we'll reminisce about in a minute. But on the other hand, you could say, what a great experience gained by most of these players. And if they weren't in the squad before, then they will have joined quite a confident squad led by the quality of Bale and Ramsey.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing this team has that the 2016 team didn't have is it has a good core of talented youngsters. Obviously, a lot of that 2016 team won't be starting now. Obviously, you'll have the regulars like Alan, Bale and Ramsey. But we've replaced those experienced players with, I think, a very capable young core. Brooks, Harry Wilson, Dan James. Yeah, even though he doesn't really play much with Man United, he always seems to turn up for Wales. So, no, I'm looking forward to it.
And that's something else we'll discuss in a minute. Players who don't always get game time with their club or might not be fully fit. Can they turn out and really produce the goods? Let's reminisce about Euro 2016 then. So, of course, Wales, they've only played at two major football tournaments. The other was the 1958 World Cup. Tim, just remind us of what it was like initially. We'll go on to the semi-finals in a minute, but Wales topped the group. In fact, there was a tight, edgy game against England, and Wales won their other two matches because that exceeded expectations to start with.
Absolutely. My expectations were if we go there and score a goal, I'll be happy. I was, expecting England and Russia to go through from that group. But, even losing to England in what I think was the 94th minute, to go from that heartbreak to get 2 wins from 3, as you said, and top the group over England was, just fantastic. A fantastic achievement from everyone to win that group.
Joe, what do you remember from that initial phase? Do you remember where you were watching, what the scenes were like?
Well, I think there's an argument to be made that Wales technically won 3 games in that group stage, because England didn't beat us, we beat ourselves. We constantly had a game plan, I feel, especially against Slovakia and Russia, and that was just to keep, and against later on against Belgium, for example, but we always had that tactic of just keep on attacking. We weren't a team that would sit back and invite pressure. And against England, we score that free kick, and then for some reason we just stop, and then we were just happy to defend that lead, and then Ashley Williams forgot what end he was playing down and headed it straight down to Vardy, and then Chris Gunter just fell over in front of Sturridge. So it were 2 very avoidable goals as well. But in terms of where I was watching it, I remember the Slovakia game. I was in Tenby with my dad and a load of his mates, and that was great because we watched Wales beat Slovakia and England draw last minute to Russia. So that was a really funny day. And then the England and the Russia game, I was out in Ayia Napa with my mates. So the England game wasn't great, obviously, but the Russia game, we went to a Welsh bar down in the town. And yeah, we knew how that happened. But I was always quite confident against, especially with the Slovakia win. I was always confident we'd beat Russia.
Yeah, and following that, then Tim, you have a quarter-final draw, or you have a round of 16 draw, I should say, against
Yeah.
Northern Ireland, and suddenly you think, well, here we go, very
Yes.
beatable opposition.
That wasn't an easy game at all. It was a very scrappy game, and I think we only won it to an own goal. So it was a very close game, nail biting, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole game, thinking, "Are we gonna see it through?" And thankfully, we did.
Indeed. And then, Joe, we move on to the Belgium game, which was the quarter-final, as I should have said, and made famous, I think, by a piece of brilliance, possibly the career highlight of Hal Robson-Kanu.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, it was definitely Kanu's career highlight, and I imagine Vokes' career highlight as well. That was all three goals, I think, were really good. I guess the only thing you can really detract from the first one was that it was a set piece rather than a goal from open play. But no, we just seem to have something against Belgium. They just can't. Obviously, they beat us recently in the World Cup qualifiers, but up until then they hadn't beaten us in, I don't know, several attempts, because we've drawn away a lot. There was obviously that one win we had at the Cardiff City Stadium where was it Reginald Gowen who just passed it back and Bale was just ready there?
Yeah.
I think so. That was a good 1-0 win. I was working that game. I was working at a pub in Cardiff. So although I couldn't watch the game, I was still really part of that atmosphere.
What was the atmosphere like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I remember I was in the kitchen when we equalised. So me and the chefs were all jumping about. And then I'm pretty sure I walked downstairs into the bar area second or two after Kanu had scored the second. So I was just right on the edge of the stairs above everyone. Everyone's going mental. I probably jumped on a few people because I didn't know what had happened. I knew we'd scored, but I didn't know how we'd scored. So I was just jumping around with everyone anyway. And then I think I was just back to work for the third goal, but we'd already won it by the second.
That's amazing, because sometimes when a goal is scored in a big match, you sometimes think, oh, maybe I should stay in this room. I'll stay in this room. I won't leave. I actually remember once changing my shirt at half time, which produced the goal. But then, there was a loss anyway. So, Tim, we then come to this game against Portugal, where really you've surpassed expectations. You've got the difficulty of Ramsey being suspended. You had James Collins being brought in defence. Everyone thought, well, that's pretty solid. But, a tough one to approach when you've already exceeded expectations by so much and you come up against a side as strong as Portugal. What do you remember from that game?
Mainly 2 moments of absolute pure brilliance from Cristiano Ronaldo. Won that game. Other than that, it was a fairly even game. And if we had Rambo, we would have won that game, I reckon. I reckon that Class and Ramsey would have won it on that day. Because before Ronaldo had those 2 flashes of brilliance, they weren't exactly that much between the 2 teams. We were matching them pretty well.
Yeah, you're very right there. And so then you reflect on it afterwards. What an amazing achievement for this Welsh side, and Chris Coleman as well, and the kind of style that he's instilled, playing together as a team, and that system that we had with you were using Ben Davies at the back. So maybe a chance for us to reflect on what sort of system we might see from Wales at this tournament and how you think they should best play. Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think with the current players we have, I don't think we'll resort to a 5 at the back, especially since in the majority of games recently we haven't been playing with a 5 back. I think Bale will be up top, probably alongside Dan James, maybe. We might play a 4-3-1-2, perhaps. Obviously, just Ramsey then sitting behind the 2. And then personally, I think in my midfield 3, it's tough then, because obviously you got you got Brooks who has to start,
Yeah.
but he's a wide
Do you think
player.
he's had enough of a season this year that back to his best?
Oh, 100%. I remember I was at the Brentford Bournemouth second leg playoff game, and before he got subbed off when Bournemouth had the red card, he looked so sharp. He'd always overplay it, but he'd beat about 3 or 4 and then overplay it. But no, I honestly think that David Brooks is the one to watch out for in this Wales squad. And then another one I really like is Tyler Roberts as well. The frustrating thing is that when he plays for Wales, we always seem to stick him up top, but he's purely a centre mid. You watch him at centre mid for Leeds, and he can easily pick up the ball, run with it. He can do those sort of Gerrard-esque 40-yard passes. So if we have him, Allen, and I don't know, if we play maybe a wide 3, because then you're probably going to have Harry Wilson in there as well. So
this is the problem. This is the problem.
Yeah.
Someone like Harry Wilson or Dan James is probably going to be on the bench, possibly Roberts. Tim, what's your view? Who are you going to leave out of your 11?
I don't know. For me, I would go 4-3-3. Bale on the right, James on the left, and Kiefer Moore up top, because Kiefer Moore has a serious aerial threat. If we pin balls into Moore, there's a good chance he get his head on something and score. So I'll go 4-3-3, probably midfield 3 of Ramsey, Brooks, and Morel, because I thought he played very well against France the other day.
Well, yeah. You're still left some players out there. So maybe the answer is that Wales have great impact substitutions that they can make, and whether it is James or whether it's Roberts or someone else, then brilliant. Yeah. Now, the defence is just as hard, possibly more difficult to actually say who might play at the back. Then you have the fact that Wayne Hennessy is obviously the trusted number 1, but at times different choices have been exercised. And there was one point where all of those goalkeepers were second choice at their clubs. So, Joe, your thoughts on who should be part of the back line?
Well, I've never really been Hennessy's biggest fan, and I thought Danny Ward played really well against France. Yeah. Especially that first goal we conceded, he was very unlucky because he pulled off a very good save from that deflected shot, and it just happened to fall to Kylian Mbappe. So I would happily see Ward start over Hennessy. I think Ben Davies stays at left back. He's still, even though he doesn't really start for Tottenham now, I still think he's a class player. Obviously then Chris Mepham, I think, will be in the middle.
Now I should add that James Lawrence has been replaced by Tom Lockyer. A bit unfortunate for him, but it is difficult to pick the other centre back alongside Mepham, who has had a decent season with Bournemouth. Tim, your thoughts then, following what you've heard from Joe about who should be in defence?
For me, this is going to sound purely biased being a Swansea fan, but right back has got to be Connor Roberts. He runs all day, very good crossing, very good defending, very good attacking, all round the best right back in the Wales squad. And then other centre back, it's got to be Joe Rodon. He wins every single header, and they're the perfect two to go right back and centre back.
Because it is close. Nico Williams, he scored a last-minute winner against Bulgaria, didn't he? And for a player who's just come into the team, has performed well. Then, of course, he had that sending off. And Roberts is the one who gets a lot more game time for Swansea. Rodon is the one who doesn't get that much game time at Spurs. So maybe there's an argument there that you wouldn't have Rodon and Williams together. You'd at least have one of them who's playing regularly. Well, that's interesting. Do you think there's anyone, Joe, who wasn't called up that Wales might miss, or really have we got enough options across the board?
I think I think with Wales, because we're such a small nation, it really is a sort of beggars can't be choosers sort of squad selection, I should say. Not that we haven't got the talented players, we definitely have talent, but I think if we leave anyone out, it's probably due to injury rather than them not being deemed good enough, just because we don't have that massive pool of players to pick from. So thinking about it now, I can't think of any outstanding names that have been left out. Unfortunately, the tournament's been pushed back a year, because if it was to be held last year, then Joe Allen probably would have missed out. And I think Joe Allen's still got. I don't know if he'll start every game. He'll probably start the Switzerland game, but I think he's still got. I think he's got enough to give to Wales still. But yeah, no, I don't think there's been any glaring omissions really from the squad.
Now, how the team will do should hinge really on how fit and how firing Gareth Bale is. On the basis of his season at Spurs, he's been in and out the team, but did finish the year pretty well, which could be quite crucial. I think 20 Premier League appearances and 11 goals is actually quite a decent tally. Obviously, Gareth Bale is used to pretty good numbers. 16 goals in 34 appearances, just looking down my notes, in all competitions. So, Tim, in any case, however fit Gareth Bale is, even if it's Gareth Bale at 75%, he always turns out for Wales. And I think the phrase he used in the past when he's at Real Madrid, it's good to feel appreciated, good to be somewhere and feel appreciated. And he's got that with Wales.
Absolutely. He's the stand-up player on the team. Even if he's, got one leg, he still starts for Wales because he is that good.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, that you have to believe that he will inspire Wales in every possible way, even if it's searching for a 90th minute equaliser. He's the man that you want in the team, whether it's supplying the cross or getting his head and scoring a goal.
Yeah, definitely. I think what gives me confidence is how he finished his term at Spurs. He really definitely found form towards the end. Scored a Premier League hat-trick. There's plenty of players who have been in the league since he left for Real Madrid who still haven't done that. I think Marcus Rashford was a name that was thrown out quite a bit, that he still hasn't scored a Premier League hat-trick. So it's great to see Bale back on form, keeping some fitness. I think the biggest worry for Wales now is how's Ramsey going to perform, because I think Bale and Ramsey are both very similar players. Ramsey's always had his injury problems, and Bale has had his injury problems more recently when moving to Madrid. And it's good to see Ramsey fit now, like officially fit for the tournament. And I think he'll stay fit throughout the tournament. But Juventus just have that revolving door of centre midfielders. Talking about, players that haven't had much game time, Ramsey will start for Wales. He has to. But again, yeah, he's definitely on that list of players that have really lacked game time due to both injuries and falling out of favour of Juventus.
How much does that worry you, Tim? Fitness issues and players not being in the team. I suppose you could have a ready-made replacement in someone like Tyler Roberts.
Yeah, it's certainly a worry because, like I spoke about earlier, we saw how we struggled without Ramsey against Portugal. So, Bale and Ramsey, they've got to be fit for all our games to have any chance of progressing. So it is a worry, but you've got to brush it to her side and just hope they are fit.
Let's talk about Rob Page now, the manager. Relatively little managerial experience at Port Vale and Northampton Town, then Wales under-21s. Suddenly he's called into this, scenario, and then he finds his team at the delayed Euros leading them out. So hugely proud moment for Page and wonderful occasion for him. What do you make of his management so far, Joe?
I'm looking for. I was never a Giggs fan, so I instantly think that Page is an improvement. I think I will be the first to hold my hand up and say I'm the most surprised person in Wales that we actually qualified for this tournament. Our qualification started shocking. It was and then the next thing you know, we've got, I think it was Hungary or a team of that caliber as our last game, and it was, we win this, we top the group, and it's like, okay, how have we done that then? But yeah, no, I'm happy with Page, and I'm very happy with Albert Stuyvenberg as well. Being an Arsenal fan, I'm a fan of him, and I think he will only bring, positive aspects to the team with his, vast Premier League experience. He was at United with Giggs as well. And one thing that I think makes me happy about Page is how we played against France. I know obviously we lost 3-0, but France arguably are favourites. I mean, the players they have is ridiculous, and we were down to 10 men, but we easily could have nicked the goal in that game. And 1-0, 2-0, we never went into that sort of damage limitation mode. We were always playing football and always attacking. And if that's Page telling the boys that just don't sit back, don't let them play around you, try and stamp your own mark in this game, then I don't see any reason why we can't, maybe not have exactly the same as a 2016 run, but something, akin to it.
Tim, do you think it feels like Page is leading a long-term project, or do you think that if results don't go Wales' way, people might be calling for a change of manager and looking around at whether he's the right man?
I think, likewise, I wasn't really a Giggs fan as well. And I think Rob Page has come in, he stamped his authority on the team. And, mustn't forget, like you said, he's managed Wales under 21. So some of the players he's managed in there are now playing for us regularly for the senior team. So it's, players that Page knows. He hasn't really changed the squad up that much. I think when we first started under Ryan Giggs, every team we would name, they'd be like, oh, there's a new player in there, there's a new player here. So Giggs mixed the team up quite a bit, gave those players their debuts. And I think Page is sort of stuck with a smaller group, and it's starting to shine off to something could be a really good long-term project. That's
interesting. I suppose Gareth Southgate is someone who also was an under-21 manager. Another example is Finland's Markku Kanerva, and particularly in the case of Kanerva, quite a humble guy who actually was a teacher, and he's not like the big all-singing, all-dancing name similar to Rob Page, but is doing a solid job in getting his country to play as a team. Let's analyse the group now, because we've got Switzerland, Turkey and Italy involved in that order, indeed, and in Baku for the first two games. Group A, of course. Joe, what's your thoughts on the group?
I've said this to a lot of people. I will be very disappointed if we don't get... I'll be very disappointed if we don't get a win. And I think I'll be equally disappointed if we don't get at least 2 wins. I think Italy are the big name in that group, but I think that's more history-wise rather than current team-wise. I mean, this is their first tournament for several years as well. They've still got a lot of incredibly old players, yet incredibly talented players, obviously. But looking more at Switzerland and Turkey have got a good amount of talented players, Kanoglu and the boy at Leicester as well, Soyuncu. But I still think they're beatable. I think we can beat them. But Switzerland, I think, is definitely the game we need to make a mark on, and it's a must-win game. Because Switzerland, I don't want to jinx it or anything, but I really don't have much of an opinion on Switzerland, because they've got, don't get me wrong, obviously they've got talented players that start regularly in the Premier League and majoritively in the Bundesliga, but I mean, they've never really looked like, they've never had a Wales 2016 or an Iceland 2016 or a Greece 2004. They're talented enough to get there, but they're not talented enough to progress from that. So I think they're very beatable. I think Turkey are beatable, and I don't see any reason why we can't get 1 or 3 points against Italy.
Really interesting. I mean, Turkey have some very dangerous players. They actually fired Lille to win the French Ligue 1 title, which was quite a shock. So Burak Yilmaz who's 35 years of age, Yusuf Yazidja, a very talented winger, Soyuncu alongside Meri Demiral at Juventus. They've got quite a good spine of a team, and you included Çalhanoğlu also. So Turkey look a really dangerous opponent. They had a great victory away at the Netherlands. They then also drew with Latvia. So maybe actually they're the sort of side that would be dangerous against the big teams, but Wales can match. Switzerland, well, if we talk about Bale and Ramsey not always being fit and not always being in the team, it's a similar case with Switzerland with Shaqiri and Xhaka. Italy then, I suppose, are in transition. They've got a lot of great talents coming through, like Nicolo Barella, the young Inter Milan midfielder. Tim, anything to add on your thoughts regarding how this group will go? Of course, it's possible for 3 teams to qualify from a group. I know that's slightly odd. Some people think it's slightly wrong that Portugal won that way. But your thoughts on how it might pan out?
My thoughts are, Switzerland, I'm confident we'll beat them easily. Turkey, sneak a win. We got, 6 points going into the Italy game in Rome. So we can go with the mindset that we are at least guaranteed a route through to the round of 16. So I'm confident we'll get 6 points from our first 2 games. So we can go into the Italy game with, we know we're through, see how it pans out, and then a chance to win the group.
Well, it all is set up to be a really exciting tournament. Let's just finish on touching with, just how much you're anticipating watching all of these games. I mean, you have to look through the schedule to see mouth-watering ties every night. Of course, we've had to wait an extra year as well. We've had the experience of the pandemic, which makes this kind of football experience even more brilliant to wait for. Joe, I don't know if you even made any plans yet to watch some of the games. How excited are you?
Oh yeah, no. Well, like I said earlier, as an Arsenal fan, I loved the fact that the Premier League ended. Oh, I couldn't wait. And now it's like, oh, now there's more football to enjoy. Well, and at least with international football, I can certainly enjoy it more than I enjoyed the Premier League season, because there just isn't as much riding on international football. So it's just that's the beauty with these tournaments, is that you can just enjoy it. In terms of plans, I live right next to a box park, so me and some friends have booked the 3 games Saturday there. So Wales, Switzerland, Denmark, Finland, and Belgium, Russia. So we'll be there all day watching those. I'm also selling programs for the Euros as well. So I think other than the 26th of June, I'm working every Wembley fixture. So that'll take the pressure off trying to find a place to catch an England game, which is fine by me, because I'm not fussy about watching England unless they draw Wales at some point. But yeah, no, I'm really, really looking forward to it, and it'll be good to have something to do now every night.
And Tim, anything to add about what you're looking forward to?
I'm just looking forward to watching more football. I watch any game that's on TV. I like watching like the obscure foreign leagues. If I find it on TV, I watch it. So I'm just looking forward to next in the summer watching football, and hopefully I can try and catch as many games as I can.
Same here. I remember trying to study for exams, and I think it was a World Cup game against Slovakia and Greece, and I was end up watching. I thought, oh, Alex, if you're watching Slovakia-Greece instead of revising, then, you're going to struggle to actually concentrate here. Brilliant. Anyway, hopefully, good luck to Wales, and fingers crossed for a great tournament. Thanks for joining us on WD Sports. Don't forget to subscribe. And all that's left to say is deal to Joe and Tim. And hope you can stay tuned with us for more content throughout the tournament.